Hello, guess what? Yes. It's me. The #1 automated answering service for Living Truthfully podcast. Obviously Amani Maranga and super producer are not in. But, don't worry. I am here. Now. They told me to tell you that your message is very, very important to them. So now your message will be answered to in the order in which it was received. Your message is number. Wow. 8,247. Whoa. I am so shocked right now. Dude. Are you still there? Okay, for whatever reason you called. My advice is, please hang up the phone, start screaming, and run to the nearest hardware store. When you get there, ask them for a cheeseburger. Like a big cheeseburger. This probably won't help you, but you'll always have something to laugh about when you think about leaving a message with us. Ha ha ha.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good whatever time it is, wherever you are. Welcome to Living Truthfully, episode 55. Yes, we are still doing this and we are continuing with the conversation about the male friendships. Wow, what a journey it has been. I've had my friends in studio. I promised you that I'll bring my boys and let me just say those have been some of the most vulnerable conversations I've had, because these are people whose opinions I actually care about. But I want to thank them all that have been here. Ted, Monge, Gowi, Gerald, Kanji, just thank you so much. And all the feedback that you've given me about this series, man. I never know whether the content is right until I hear back from you. And I cannot begin to thank you enough for the feedback that you've given me and the affirmation that you've given me today. Now, you guys know that I do this podcast with the help of a super producer. His name is Lee Kanyotu. And one of the things that Lee does, apart from make this podcast sound, fantastic like it does, Lee has a way of just finding articles and, just things and information that is relevant to the conversations that we have. And actually, sometime last year, he brought to my attention this guy. He's a pastor. He's called Drew Hunter from Indiana in the States. And Pastor Drew Hunter has written the book Made for Friendship, the relationship that halves our sorrows and doubles our joys. And the article I think that Lee found was Why is Friendship Hard for Men? And the article has a subtitle saying 5 ways to build stronger relationships. You can find it online on his website, desiringgod.org. So we called Pastor Drew Hunter because Lee is just that guy. He gets the contacts, he emails the guys like, yeah, we are an African podcast, and he just has a way of packaging that conversation that makes people want to talk to us. And so, yes, we called Pastor Drew Hunter. He was gracious enough. Actually, after 2 maybe failed attempts at getting the right time, he was gracious enough to just take a call and have a conversation about male friendships. And so, here goes. How to make this friendship stronger from a man who's actually researched it. Take a listen. Good, whatever time it is, wherever you are, Drew, what time is it?
It is about 1 o'clock in the afternoon for me.
1 o'clock in the afternoon. Thank you so much for agreeing to be on the podcast, Living Truthfully. Welcome to A Man Conversation. I want you to introduce yourself a little bit, Mr. Drew Hunter, and tell us who you are and what you do and where you are in the world.
Sure. Yeah. So I am in the state of Indiana in America. I live just near the city of Indianapolis.
Oh, fantastic.
And I live here with my wife, and we have 4 sons. They're all under the age of 10. So our home life is pretty fun and full right now.
Oh, good stuff. How old are your children?
They are 9, 8, 7, and 3.
Oh, wow. What happened between 7 and 3? Don't answer that. It's
okay. We hit the pause button because the first 3 that close together was quite a bit.
Close, man. I thought it was 9, 8, 7, 6.
Right. Yeah. That would have been pretty hard. So,
Yeah.
yeah. So we have a lot of fun, and I live here as a pastor. So I'm a pastor of a church in the area, and so a lot of wonderful people get to interact with and spend time with through the week.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Drew, for agreeing to come on board. My producer, Lee, reached out to you. Lee reads a lot of stuff online, and he came across an article that you wrote about male friendships. And he said, you know what? We need to have a conversation with this guy. And I want to go straight into it and say, why are male friendships important?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think, male friendships, part of the larger category, just friendship and community and connection is really essential to really what it means to be a human being and to flourish as a human.
Yeah.
And so men in particular certainly need this. We weren't made to go through life as just kind of in an individualistic way on our own. One of the greatest joys in life is the deep friendship and community we can experience with others. When we go through great suffering, it's often the presence and the close friendship of others who get us through there and help us and give us wisdom and comfort through that process. There's a host of reasons why real community is tied to really our overall sense of happiness in life and our flourishing in life. And so, men, I think in our cultures today are really struggling to find this deep connection. And there's no surprise that it's often, right with that is connected to lower levels of just happiness and a sense of purpose through life.
I've researched here a bit and have, most of the conversations that I've seen you write about are about friendships and about community. I've seen you write about even friendships in marriage, and
yeah.
I was wondering, like, why is the sense of community strong for you as a person? Why did you go for this particular, topic or subject?
Yeah, there's probably a collection of reasons that came together in a certain season of my life that made this become really important to me.
Okay.
So one of them would be, just personally, I've been so enriched by the deep friendships that I've had.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, I was intentional to a degree with these friendships, but I realized that I was taking them for granted at some level. And so I realized how thankful I really needed to be and was for these friendships when I was noticing in our culture, at least where I live, and it seems to be true globally right now, that there really is this steep decline in real friendships. So I was reading studies about, sociology studies, social isolation is one of the hottest topics right now, and it's growing. And I was reading, studies where people would survey thousands of people and find out that, 50% or more said that no one knew them well. Not a single person really knew them well in their view. And something like 40% of people in one survey said that their relationships that they had in life were not meaningful. Wow. So I realized that I was so grateful for what I had, and that what I had was being missed by, over half of the people are self-indicating that they really don't have people who they can confide in, people who know them, people who they spend time with. So culture, there really is this epidemic or crisis right now in friendships. And then the two other things that came together as I started thinking about this was, I would have hoped that, I'm part of a religious community, I'm part of a Christian church. I would hope that the relationships in a church would be really deep and thick and kind of be an alternative to the decline in our culture.
Yeah.
But I was finding that while there was an emphasis on community in general and larger groups, that people could still be a part of those communities and still not really be known. At a level that deepen their mind and heart, and still really go through life without rich relationships and meaningful friendships. So that was kind of eye-opening for me to consider. And then, so I went to the Bible just to consider, what does the Bible actually have to say? And I was kind of surprised, just at how striking a couple places in the Bible talked about the significance and importance of friendship, like the book of Proverbs in the Bible, and things that Jesus even said about himself being a true friend and making his followers his friends. So those things together made me realize there really is a need for us to think deeply about friendship and not rely on a superficial understanding of friendship, but recognize how central it is, how much this really is missing in our life. And I found that as I started talking to my own friends about this, people would say that once they started thinking about it for even a few minutes, they realized, I thought I understood friendship, but I realized I have never really thought deeply about it or intentionally about it. And I really am not actually as good of a friend as I had assumed I was, now that I'm really thinking about it. So that's what really put the desire in me to think about this well and to talk about it with others and to really encourage friendships to flourish.
I'm wondering what has caused the decline in the connections, just making real human connections. What's really causing that decline, that we now have 50% of people saying that they don't have meaningful connections?
Right. Yeah, I think it's a really important question to find out what's happened, because in many different cultures or eras, I'm sure that there's always a need to develop close friendship and to work on things relationally, but there really is this decline. And so it's a great conversation to even just have with friends. Just ask people, what do you think? So from my sense and study, it seems like a few factors have really come together for a decline in friendship, and friendship among men in particular. And a few of them would be, one is just an overall sense of busyness in life.
Okay.
And I think tied to the busyness is our sense of individualism, so that we want to succeed in a vocation or with work, but then that requires so much time. And then if you also have a family, then you recognize that that's a priority. And so by the time you have work responsibilities fulfilled and time with family, there's not much left. And a lot of guys feel like they really just need to take whatever's left and have kind of personal time. And so there really isn't much time left for friendship. It even if they value it to some degree, that it's hard to prioritize it. So I remember having a conversation with some guys who were in their 20s and 30s, and I asked them what came to their mind when they thought about friendship. And one guy just said, that used to be nice.
That's a strange response.
Yeah.
That used to be nice.
Yeah, and it does show, I think, that what's going on with men, once they reach their mid-upper 20s and 30s, friendship really does start to decline in their lives. And that can continue on throughout the rest of life. And so I think men in particular need to think about their own story of friendship and what's happened in their own lives to push that to the margins or off altogether. And so I think with men, another reason for the decline in friendship is our view of masculinity has shifted as well. So in previous eras and cultures, masculinity had this combination of toughness and tenderness, and there wasn't an uncomfortability with affection or even affectionate language, or telling a friend, I love you, brother, I'm so glad to see you, I respect you, here's why I admire you, I missed you. That kind of language now can feel really uncomfortable, because we don't have a category of masculinity that has a place for it, so we get very uncomfortable with it.
It's been robbed. It's been robbed of us.
Yeah. And at the same time, we've sexualized love.
Yeah.
And so we can't really imagine people that have a really close, loving, affectionate relationship and imagine that sexuality wouldn't be a part of that somehow. And that can even just make people who recognize that you can have affectionate relationships without it being sexualized, it can make them nervous to express affection because they'll be misunderstood.
Yeah.
And so it causes us really to pull back from affectionate language, encouraging language, maybe even spending time together too much. And then right alongside that, at least the men that I've spent time with, and I had an issue with this in the past too, is just our style of communication can be very surfacey and superficial and often critical and sarcastic. Yeah. And so we'll talk about sports, we'll talk about work, we'll talk about general things. And even in there, we'll be kind of making fun of each other and joking. And I think there's a place for for a certain kind of joking and friendly banter. But if you fill your language, your relationships with sarcasm, and you don't give affirmation and encouragement, really over time, we can wonder if our friends really do respect us or care about us.
In fact, I was going to ask
then there's no room for encouragement.
I was going to ask you if you think, the bullying is a necessary part of male friendship.
Yeah, I certainly think we got to be careful. We have definitely swung the pendulum toward, tearing each other down, certainly bullying, or just being so quick to make a witty, funny comment at a friend's expense, and everyone laughs and that person laughs. But really, over time, you can really feel discouraged and beat down and guarded and not safe with each other.
Yeah.
And so I think it'd be great to swing the pendulum back the other way. And, I've heard one person say he's never met a person who's been too encouraged, which is true. So I just think let's just go all out with honoring each other, expressing esteem for one another, encouraging each other, and really try to have some self-control, even if we think it's funny in the moment, with comments that tear each other down.
That's such a good perspective, and thank you for sharing it. I'm wondering, do male friendships threaten marriages and relationships? That whole going out with the boys culture, just a space where male friendships could be cultivated. Do you think that's threatening to marriages?
I think it's really important that as we recover male friendship, we also recover a strong sense of friendship within marriage, because I think it's threatened, and a wife would rightly feel hurt if the husband does not view his wife as a true friend or even the truest friend, and therefore to spend time when work is already maybe taking up a lot of time, to spend time leaving a family or a wife to spend time with other friends while neglecting the relationship in a marriage, that really can be damaging. And so we really need a both-and approach here. We need to pursue true friendship in marriage and honoring and expressing esteem and encouragement with our wives as men, and then also have space to grow in true friendship with other men. So I think in my marriage, we've talked a lot about this, and we're regularly talking, my wife and I, about getting time together, but then also how can we free each other up to enjoy friendship outside of our marriage? I mean, either as couples or just, going to experience friendship outside of it. So even this weekend, my wife is going to take off for an overnight trip with a few friends just to get away and enjoy friendship. And what I found is that ends up being really an enriching experience for our marriage. She's more refreshed and encouraged with these friends. She has stories to share with me, and the same goes for when she frees me up to go be with friends. I take an extended weekend trip with a number of friends every year, and my wife is encouraging of that because she sees that I come back a better man because I'm with friends who are encouraging and wise and helpful to me as a man, and it enriches our marriage. So I think it's really important then to do both of it, friendship within marriage and outside at the same time.
Tell me a bit about your friends and maybe how you've over time cultivated, the male friendships that you have in your life.
Yeah, and I'm certainly not perfect and constantly trying to grow, and which is why friendship really requires a lot of grace and patience with each other and forgiveness. I will often return a phone call way late. In fact, right now as I'm talking, I realize I have two friends who have left me voicemails a week or so ago, and I have not returned it yet. So my first thing will be to just apologize, for not calling them back. And so I think that's part of a way that cultivating is just apologizing for being absent. But a few of the key ways that I've strengthened and been able to have strong friendships with friends are to do a couple things. One is to establish some rhythms or patterns for our friendships. So not just waiting for a perfect season of life or an occasion to get together, but really planning and scheduling time together. So I just an hour ago sent an email response to 3 friends about getting together in a few weeks. I live 3 hours away from them now because I moved, which that can be hard for friendship, but we've just committed to several times a year, 3 or 4 times, I'll drive up and just spend an evening with them. We'll have a fire, we'll have a dinner, we'll have a great time together. And so we just have committed to having this pattern of every 3 months or so, we'll get together. And then closer friends, I'll make sure that I have a regular rhythm to get together as well. So every other Monday, I have a friend that I grab coffee with, and we connect throughout the week other times. But this is a regular meeting to make sure that we have this pattern of getting together and talking about the serious and important things of life. You know, how is our marriages going? How are we feeling about our work? How are we growing in our relationship with God? And then we just try to talk honestly and openly about ways in which we struggle. So getting those rhythms and patterns can be really important. My wife and I also have this pattern of once a week, usually on a Wednesday night, we just have that night separated for, we just call it hospitality, where we just want to make sure we're inviting people into our home so we can enjoy friendship together.
That's cool. I'm waiting for my invite.
Oh, yeah, you're welcome to come. Let's get that. Actually, that would be fantastic. I'd love to cross paths with you at some point. So, and I have, phone calls. I have a pattern of when I'm driving home from work or I have a little bit of a longer commute, I just use that time not just to listen to other things or music, but to call a friend. So those are a few key ways that I've tried to maintain these relationships through everyday life, and getting together with people, and then even just getting together with people that I don't see much because we don't live close. So I mentioned even earlier, we have this extended weekend trip. We call it MOWALO, which stands for Men's Extended Weekend Adventure Liberation Organization. Just for fun.
I love it.
Yep. And so we've been doing it for 17 years or so, where a group of us, about 10 or 13 of us, can make it each time, where we just pick a place that we can meet for about 3 days, and we'll go hiking or camping or canoeing and just get that time together. And then we try to stay in touch through the year, and different ones of us are closer friends, but that's really been an anchor in our lives that's been so important, where we just leave technology aside and just get out in nature and time with each other. So that's been a great rhythm.
And now a word from our sponsors.
If you would like to sponsor or advertise on our podcast, Living Truthfully, reaching audiences just like you, please contact us on livingtruthfully@thamanimedia.com. That's Living Truthfully at THAMANI media.com. Thank you, and we are looking forward to partnering with you in adding value to our listeners' lives. And now, back to our story. You know, in your article, you talk about, making diving your conversations a little deeper. So you say drop each conversation one notch deeper, and I find myself wondering, how do you cultivate vulnerability in male friendships? It can be really awkward, being the guy who says, "Okay, so guys, I don't think our relationship is deep enough, so I'm gonna drop a bomb or something I'm struggling with."
Right.
What's a tip you could give on just how to create a safe space for vulnerability and actually develop or cultivate some vulnerability in male friendships?
Yeah. So there's a few things that come to mind. One is, in general, in conversations, I think there's a really great, easy step that every man can take that would take any conversation a little bit deeper and closer to the things that really matter in life, and closer even to the areas where we can be vulnerable. And that is just to learn to ask a few good questions and be ready with asking a question in a conversation. So if we're having a conversation with someone and it usually is about sports or work in general or something that's more on the surface, those are great conversations. But we can take that conversation a few notches deeper with just asking a question like, what's on your mind these days? Because that we usually have important things that we're thinking about or wondering about or curious about, so what's on your mind, or what's been exciting or encouraging to you lately? And then the follow-up question to that is, has there been anything really discouraging in your life recently? So I even build that into our family dinner conversations to foster that kind of openness. We all go around and just share, what was encouraging and we're thankful for today, and then what was really discouraging. today. So doing that in friendships as well. So I think having a few just go-to questions that take conversation deeper will help encourage that kind of depth. And then there's a couple other things. One would be identifying 1, 2, or 3 people in your life who you sense really are the closest friends that you have, and learning to just get together in that rhythm to talk more deeply about things. So I mentioned I have that friend that I meet with every other week or so. And part of that is we've just learned to ask those kinds of questions. And then we now have a few questions that we always ask and talk about together. You know, how's your marriage going? We know each other's struggles. We ask about those. We ask how we're encouraged or discouraged. And then over time, doing that every other week for a few years now, that really ends up being a place where we can share anything with each other, because we've learned that we can trust each other. We're not going to overreact. We're going to encourage each other. So that's another thing. And then the final thing would be to not be afraid to take the lead in being vulnerable and open. It can be kind of risky because you don't know how people will respond. But I think just learning to feel comfortable and okay with letting people know that you're not always okay, and being the first to say, hey, here's something that I'm discouraged about, or here's, I kind of feel almost embarrassed to say it, but I've been really anxious about this. I know it may sound kind of, silly or not a big deal, but to me, I'm just realizing it is. And so I wanted to share that with you. Do you have any advice for me? Just learning to be open in those conversations really models for people that you're the kind of person that they can actually be safe with to open up with their own struggles, because you recognize you have them as well. And then when they do share it, don't just say, whoa, that is weird, you have a problem, but, ask questions. Don't overreact, draw them out, encourage them. I think that can go a real long way into helping us get open.
That's really cool, man. Thanks for the tips and thanks for the questions that you've given. I like the questions that you're asking, or that you've given that we can ask for, to help build vulnerability. I have a random thought.
Right.
And I think that is very unique to men is we often confuse mentorship relationships into with friendships.
Yeah.
I find that often a man is happy to go to another man if they need advice, if they need guidance into, or some form of mentorship. And they're happy to do that with, people that they could mentor, or, like I'm happy to take on a young guy that I could mentor. But it's different from trying to forge intimate relationships with my peers, that has no mentorship element to it. It's just a pure friendship for the sake of friendship. How can you help us, distinguish, maybe not just distinguish, but, be able to move ourselves from just relationships that are transactional in a sense to relationships that are built for friendship, just for friendship?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think in a lot of ways, we really have rightly identified different kinds of relationships, like peer relationships, mentor relationships, and so forth. Or accountability relationships is language that some would use. But I think we can sometimes overdo it by making these isolated categories, as though friendship is really for getting time together and laughing and sharing interests together. And accountability relationships are about being vulnerable with where we struggle. And mentorships are where we get and give advice. And really, I think what we need to do is start overlapping those a lot more. And so for a mentor relationship, that really the best mentoring relationships should also be developing into true friendship. And a close friend of mine, I'm 36 right now. A close friend of mine is about 80 years old. And so there is a certain sense in which he is way down the road from me and I learn from him, but we also view each other as friends and we have a great time together and we'll get together for meals with families and things like that. And so there really is this great overlapping encouragement and growth there with friendship. And then I think with our peer relationships, if we learn to talk more deeply and encourage and seek wisdom and get advice from one another, those really can be, we can recognize that we're actually mentoring each other in the ways that we're strong, so someone might be giving me great advice as a friend in some area because he has a lot more wisdom than I do, but I have that wisdom for him as well. And so those can be more mentoring on a peer level as well. But yeah, as I said a moment ago, we also should have friendships across the generations, and that those can be really close as well. So I think it's just key to share life, have meals together. Meals are just such a great way to break down any barriers and to create a safe space for deep conversations with mentors or friends, and then also just to have rich communal sharing times together.
What would the world look like without male friendships?
Wow, what a question. It would be, I think, without true friendship, we would be a lot more lonely. We'd be a lot more sad. And we would probably be making a lot more foolish decisions, because we really need each other to grow in wisdom and protect ourselves from our own foolish thinking often, right?
Yeah, of course. I'm the king of foolish decisions. The world saw a bromance between Obama and Biden. And I think in many ways we admired the friendship that they have.
Yeah.
And so the flip side of that question is, what would the world look like when we have strong male friendships?
Yeah.
What do you think that world would look like?
Well, it would certainly be, the word that comes to my mind, the two words, is just joyful flourishing, right? Going through life with a greater sense of confidence, stability, hope, because we know that we have people who know us, who love us, who are there for us in our greatest moments of suffering, and a great sense of purpose, and where we're encouraging others and seeing them grow and flourish and be encouraged, and just great joy, even through all the sorrows of life, this rich joy of friendship. So there was one pastor in the 1800s named J.C. Ryle who once wrote, he said, "This world is a dark place. It's a depressing place. It's a lonely place. And the brightest sunbeam in it is a friend." And that's just such an encouraging picture for its realism and its hope, right? It's realistic because this is a broken, sad, discouraging life so often. Life is very hard, but one of the brightest sunbeams in it is a friend. And so, one of the things that I've been so encouraged by is how, as a pastor, I spent a lot of time in the Bible. And so the Bible's pages open up with this vision of the God as a triune God of communal love, Father, Son, and Spirit, eternally existing in a friendship of sorts, creating humanity in his own image. And then when he created humanity, he started with Adam. And before sin or entered the world or anything was wrong, he said, it's not good that man should be alone. And so I think that really is a statement of what male friendship would be like without people and rich relationships. It's really just not good. And when we do have rich friendships, that's when we can flourish with great joy in life and in communities and in cities and in towns. Think of the political divides that are going on, at least in my country. We would go a long way toward healing this if we would get off the internet shouting things at people we don't know, and sit across the table and seek to understand each other and appreciate each other, even if we completely disagree about certain political decisions.
Wow. There's a scripture that says there's a friend that sticks closer than a brother, and I'm often fascinated by that it says brother, because there's a connotation about the bond of brotherhood and what that friendship then looks like, But last question, and I'm only asking this to you because you're a pastor. Do you think Jesus was trying to tell us something when he had 12 guys hanging out with him?
That's a great observation. Jesus didn't come and just wander around alone. He gathered together around him 12 men, and that there were 3 of them that were even closer to him, James, John, and Peter. And then in the Gospel of John, we learn that John himself was probably Jesus' closest friend. Yeah. And then he called, it's so striking that on the night before Jesus was crucified, he gathered his disciples together, had a meal with them, opened his heart and was vulnerable with them and encouraging to them. And he said, No longer do I call you servants. I have called you friends. And then he said, right at that same time, he said, the greatest act of love possible is that someone would lay down his life for his friends. And then he says, I've called you friends. Because what he was doing there is he was affirming to them that he's not just in a servant-master relationship with them, though that's true. His disciples are servants. Followers of Jesus are, they view him as a master. But he's saying that there's a greater privilege there as well. He's calling us his friends, and that when Christians are to see what happened on the cross, this great act of love, we're to see Jesus dying for his friends, right? Dying in their place for their sins, that they might be rescued forever into friendship forever. It's just an incredible way of understanding really the heart of what Christianity is. So as a pastor, that's just really encouraging to me, because it means the message that I'm communicating so often is really at the heart of it, a message of love and friendship rooted in God himself befriending us.
I love that so much. I know I said that was going to be the last question, but I just wondered what happens to someone who has been betrayed, someone who has failed in connecting before, and, someone who struggles to make real male connections as a guy. Now, what encouragement would you give him?
Yeah, well, a few things. So first, to men who have struggled to make connections or have been betrayed, you're certainly not alone. The world is filled with broken friendships. I have pain in my own life, and I know people close to me do. And so you're not alone, even though it might seem like so many others are really flourishing in friendship. The statistics would say that that's actually not happening. And so when you're in a room with 5 people, you can bet that in general, 2 or 3 of them are actually really wishing that they had closer connection with people as well. Another thing that comes to mind is that there are really intentional steps that you can take to just keep at it and keep trying. Asking these kinds of questions that are deeper, trying to connect with people with rhythms over a meal, maybe. And then also, I think the best advice that really there is for friendship is it's most important not to think about getting good friends, but being a good friend. And so really, walking into a room and thinking, who might need my friendship? Who can I encourage? Who can I build up? Who might be lonely? Who might be having a hard time? And then seeking to be that true friend to that person. I think that actually does lead to true friendship, but either way, that's really the posture we want to have, is how can we be used to help so many others who are suffering and broken in their friendships. And then I think if you've experienced betrayal in friendship, that really does it's painful, and it does take a long time to heal. There may be an opportunity to seek that person out and express that and offer forgiveness if that's wanted. But it also is important to maybe try to heal and close that season of life, and then step out ahead to a new day, seeking to be a friend with others.
You've written a book, Made for Friendship, the relationship that halves our sorrows and doubles our joys. Is this something that you talk about extensively in this book, how we build these friendships?
Yeah, in that book, what I'm trying to do is both be encouraging and motivating by giving us a big vision of what real friendship is and what it's all about and why it's important, but also get really practical with how do we actually do this? How do we cultivate it in our life? It's like a garden. You need some tips and advice and go-to strategies to make a garden flourish and not just be overcome by weeds and things like that. And so, yeah, my hope is to take some things that I've learned and put into practice in my life and learn from others and share those with other people that they might put those into practice as well.
Just to encourage you, I think this is really relevant. I'm just thinking my kids went to a new school this term, and they're both struggling with making friendships. And this might be an excellent book for us to read, with its practicality on how to, nurture friendships. And so I think it's really relevant. And thank you for writing this book.
Yeah, you're welcome. And I think, that could be a good step, is to just grab a copy of a book for yourself and a friend or someone in your family or a son. And read through that together. I have questions at the end of each chapter to even foster conversation, because that could even be a good context to be talking about the things that really matter in life. So,
Pastor Drew Hunter, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for taking about 30-40 minutes of your afternoon to just hang out with us and talk to two strangers from Nairobi. And we certainly now, consider you our friend. Thank you so much for your friendship.
It's been my pleasure. Really, really enjoy getting to know you, and hope that many friendships form as a result of thinking about friendship together, and as a result of the conversation.
You and me both. Please pass our heartfelt regards to Christina and to your 4 boys. And I pray that what you're trying to do in terms of just fostering community grows and catches like wildfire, because the world needs it.
Oh, thank you very much. I will.
God bless you and goodbye. Thank you so much, sir.
Likewise.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
I can't tell you how important this conversation on male friendships is. This series that we've just done has really opened up my eyes to what a successful male experience could look like. There's a part of scripture that talks about iron sharpening iron. And it's in a way, it's saying that you sort of need your ilk, your kind, to be able to sharpen you. If we ever do anything important, for me, I think that this particular series is it. Saying, dude, build great, vulnerable, safe male relationships around you. You will never regret it. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you, Lee, for making this conversation happen. This was truly your topic. And thank you, my boys, for coming through. Next week we start something new. God bless you. See you next week.